The African savanna does not mourn in silence. It mourns in the heat that shimmer across the horizon and in the sudden, hollow stillness that follows a pride's collapse. Under the sprawling, skeletal limbs of a lone acacia tree, the world had ended for a bloodline. The dust had settled after the nomads moved through, leaving behind only the scent of iron and the heavy absence of a mother's low, vibrating purr. Hidden deep within a fortress of whistling thorn bushes, a tiny shape remained. She was no more than 5 pounds of fur and trembling resolve. Mara. She was the last of her line, a tiny spark in a vast, indifferent furnace. On her left rear flank, a distinct, heart-shaped patch of darker fur marked her identity, a signature of nature that was never meant to be seen by human eyes. Dr. Sarah found her as the golden-orange magic hour began to bleed into the horizon. The light filtered through the flat-topped trees, casting long, spindly shadows that looked like reaching fingers. Sarah had seen the aftermath of pride takeovers before, but this was different. Usually, there is nothing left to find. But there, squinting against the harsh glare of the dying sun, was the cub. She was a fragment of a ghost, weighing less than a breath. Sarah knelt in the dust, the heat of the earth radiating through her trousers. She didn't reach out immediately. She knew the law of this land. To touch is to claim, and to claim is to change a destiny forever. But the cub's eyes were cloudy with dehydration, her small chest heaving with the effort of simply existing. Sarah looked at the heart-shaped spot on the cub's flank and felt a weight settle in her own chest. To save this life, Sarah would have to step into a role that went against every rule of wild distance. She would have to become the mother that the savanna had stolen away. She wrapped the cub in a rough burlap sack, feeling the tiny, frantic heartbeat against her palms. The rescue was silent, but the implications were deafening. The sanctuary clinic was a world of white tile, humming refrigerators, and the sharp, antiseptic smell of ozone. It was a place designed to heal bodies, but for Mara it felt like a tomb. For 3 days, the cub sat in the corner of her enclosure, her face pressed against the cold steel mesh. She did not cry. She did not pacing. She simply waited for a mother who would never come. Mara refused to eat. Every time Sarah approached with a bottle of fortified milk, the cub would retreat into a corner, her ears pinned back, a low, raspy hiss vibrating in her throat. It wasn't aggression. It was a total, devastating lack of trust. To Mara, Sarah was not a savior. She was a giant, featherless predator that smelled of soap and chemicals. Sarah watched through the observation glass, her own face drawn with exhaustion. She saw the cub's ribs beginning to trace lines beneath her tawny fur. The heart-shaped spot on Mara's flank seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a failing engine. Sarah tried everything. She tried warming the milk to the exact body temperature of a lioness. She tried playing recordings of pride vocalizations. Nothing worked. The cub was wasting away. It is a specific kind of heartbreak to watch a creature choose a slow exit over a life it does not recognize. Sarah realized that the medicine was not the answer. The stethoscope could hear the heart, but it couldn't tell her why it had lost the will to beat. Mara was trapped in a clinical wall, separated from the only thing that made sense to her: the wild, dangerous, and beautiful world of the acacia. Mara was not a patient. She was a displaced spirit. Sarah sat on the floor outside the enclosure, her head resting against the wall. She realized she was treating Mara like a domestic casualty when she should have been treating her like a queen in exile. The survival of the bloodline was slipping through her fingers, one refused drop of milk at a time. The realization hit Sarah in the blue-gray frost light of the 4th morning. Mara didn't need a nurse. She didn't need a cage that kept the world out. She needed the world to come back to her. Sarah ordered the transport team to move. They didn't go to a bigger enclosure. They went back out, deep into the heart of the sanctuary's wilder northern sector, to a thicket of acacia trees that mirrored the place where Mara was found. They built a secure, open-air enclosure made of natural wood and reinforced mesh, woven through with real thorn bushes. There were no white tiles here, There was only the smell of rain-soaked earth and the distant call of the night jars. Sarah didn't put Mara in a box. She put her back into the shadow of the trees. The flip was immediate and profound. The moment Mara's paws touched the dirt, her posture changed. She didn't hide in a corner. She crawled under a low-hanging branch of an acacia and looked up at the stars. Sarah made a radical decision. She would no longer try to handle the cub. She would become a ghost. She donned a suit of neutral, scent-masked fabric and stayed in the shadows, using a long-reaching pole to offer the bottle from behind a screen of leaves. She became the shadow that provided. Sarah watched from a distance, hidden by a blind, as Mara finally took the bottle. The cub drank with a desperation that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. But Sarah didn't move closer. She didn't offer a caress or a soft word. She remained the silent provider, the invisible guardian who existed only in the periphery of Mara's senses. Sarah was no longer a doctor. She was the ghost mother. She realized that for Mara to survive the wild later, she must never learn to love a human. She must only learn that the world, despite its cruelty, would still provide a shadow to shield her from the sun. The heart-shaped spot on Mara's flank seemed to glow in the amber light of the evening, a mark of a new, fragile contract between two species. Resilience is often tested in the hours between midnight and dawn, when the moon is a silver sliver and the predators of the night begin their silent patrol. It was the third week of the acacia vigil. Sarah was perched in an observation tree, her muscles aching, her eyes straining through night vision goggles. The wind had shifted, carrying a heavy, musky scent that made the hair on her arms stand up. A leopard was moving through the tall grass. He was a massive male, a smudge of liquid muscle and spotted shadow. His movements so fluid they seemed to defy the physics of the brush. He had caught the scent of the cub. He wasn't hunting for hunger alone. He was investigating a rival's offspring. He circled the enclosure, his claws clicking softly against the dry stones. Inside the enclosure, Mara had frozen. She was pressed into the dirt, her heart-shaped spot trembling. She was too small to fight, and her mother was not there to roar a defiance that would shake the leaves. Sarah's hand went to the flared gun at her belt, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. This was the crisis. If Sarah stepped out and drove the leopard away with shouts and fire, Mara would see her as a protector. The bond would be sealed, and Mara's wild spirit would be tamed by gratitude. But if Sarah did nothing, the leopard might find a way through the mesh, or Mara would die of pure terror. Sarah had to protect the cub without being seen as the savior. The leopard lunged, slamming his weight against the natural wood pylons. The structure groaned. Mara let out a high-pitched, thin shriek. Sarah didn't yell. Instead, she reached for a remote trigger. Hidden speakers 50 yards away from the enclosure erupted with the recorded roar of a dominant male lion. At the same moment, Sarah threw a small, silent percussion grenade into the brush on the opposite side of the leopard. The leopard recoiled, his instincts telling him he was caught between a rival king and an unknown explosion. He vanished into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. Sarah stayed in her tree, breathing through the adrenaline, her eyes fixed on the cub. Mara was still shaking, but she was looking at the bush where the lion had roared. She didn't look at Sarah's tree. Sarah had saved her, but she had remained a ghost. The struggle was not just against the leopard. It was against Sarah's own desire to climb down, scoop the cub up, and tell her she was safe. But motherhood in the wild is not about comfort. It is about the strength to let the child believe they are the ones who survived. 3 years passed like a sequence of sunrises. The tiny, 5-pound fragment had transformed into a sleek, powerful lioness. Her muscles moved like coiled springs beneath a coat the color of dried honey. And there, on her left rear flank, the heart-shaped spot had grown, stretching into a bold, dark emblem of her journey. The day of the release was not filled with fanfare. There were no cameras, no crowds, just a gate opening into the vastness of the northern Pride lands. Sarah watched from a distance, her binoculars steady despite the trembling in her soul. Mara stepped out of the enclosure. She didn't look back. She didn't search for a human face. She looked at the horizon. Mara moved toward a distant grove of acacia trees where a new pride, a group of females who had lost their own lead male, were resting in the heat. It was a risky union, but Mara carried the scent of the wild, not the scent of the clinic. She approached with the correct submissive posture, her tail tucked, her head low. One of the older lionesses stood up, sniffed the air, and let out a low, accepting rumble. The ghost mother's work was finished. Sarah sat in her jeep, watching as Mara disappeared into the golden-orange light of the magic hour. The cub who had refused to eat, who had almost faded into a white-tiled memory, was now a queen among her own kind. Motherhood is not always about the blood that flows between two hearts. Sometimes it is about the shadow that shields you when you are too small to stand in the sun. Sarah realized that her greatest achievement was not that Mara remembered her, but that Mara had forgotten her entirely. In the wild, to be forgotten by the one you saved is the highest form of love. The heart-shaped spot was now just a mark on a hunter, a silent signature of a woman who chose to be a ghost so that a lioness could be a queen. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold, the first roar of the evening echoed across the plains. It was a sound of belonging. It was a sound of home. Motherhood is not a matter of blood, but of the shadow that shields you from the sun. We often think that to love is to be seen, to be thanked, and to be remembered. But perhaps the purest form of care is the one that leaves no footprints. Dr. Sarah became a ghost so that Mara could become a legend. Have you ever had to protect someone from a distance, knowing they might never know it was you? Share your story of ghost gardening or silent support in the comments below. If the story of silent sacrifice moved you, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to Wildheart Narratives. Every story we tell is a tribute to the unseen guardians of our world.